Admiral Jae-Sung Lee stood in the command center, buried deep beneath Seoul, staring at the holographic display that showed the approaching Council fleet. 38,000 ships, the survivors of their once mighty armada, moved steadily toward Earth like a cloud of death. Against them, humanity could field exactly 80 ships, most of them damaged vessels that had escaped from the outer battles. "Sir, we're receiving reports from all defensive stations," said Captain Soomin Choi, his student who now commanded the new flagship Incheon Rising. "Every platform is ready. Every city has turned on its defenses. The lunar batteries are online and ready to fire." Lee nodded but kept his eyes on the display. Around him, the command center buzzed with quiet activity as officers coordinated humanity's final stand. They all knew the simple mathematics of the situation. Even after months of grinding warfare had reduced the Council fleet by more than 20,000 ships, the enemy still outnumbered them nearly 500 to 1. "Admiral," came a voice from the communication station. "Dr. Kim reports that her project is finished. She's asking permission to begin the final phase." Dr. Sun Hee Kim had been working in secret since the war began, turning Earth's entire industrial power toward a single, desperate goal. Now, as the Council fleet entered the solar system, her work was ready to be revealed to the galaxy. On the surface of Earth, hidden weapon systems rose from beneath cities, mountains, and oceans. What the Council fleet detected as they approached Earth was impossible to believe. The entire planet had been turned into a fortress. Every continent was covered with defensive weapons. Orbital platforms surrounded the world like a metal shell. The moon itself had become one massive gun battery. "Dear God," whispered Major Kyung-Ho Yoon, the Special Forces commander who had helped coordinate the planetary defenses. "We actually did it. We turned our whole world into a weapon." But Admiral Lee knew that weapons alone wouldn't win this battle. He opened a channel to speak to the entire human fleet, broadcasting on all frequencies so that enemy ships could hear his words as well. "This is Admiral Lee to all human forces. Today we make our final stand, not just for Earth, but for the idea that free beings have the right to choose their own path among the stars." He paused, looking around the command center at faces that had become like family over the long months of war. "The Council believes that might makes right, that superior technology gives them the authority to decide who lives and who dies. They've conquered dozens of species by convincing them that resistance is hopeless." On his tactical display, the Council fleet was entering weapons range, thousands of ships moving in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority even after all their losses. "But we know something they don't understand," Lee continued. "The line isn't held by superior numbers or better weapons. The line is held by people who refuse to accept that some things cannot be defended. Today we show the galaxy what holding the line really means." The battle began with the fury of an exploding star. Council ships opened fire with enough energy to burn continents to glass. But Earth's defenses answered with everything humanity had learned about warfare in their violent history. Planet-based railguns fired projectiles at incredible speeds. Orbital platforms launched missile swarms that darkened space like clouds of metal locusts. The moon itself became a massive shotgun, hurling asteroids at enemy formations. Captain Choi led the human fleet in a desperate charge directly into the Council formation. Her ship, the Incheon Rising, had been built from the wreckage of a dozen destroyed vessels, armed with weapons salvaged from across human space. "All ships, attack pattern Omega," she ordered over the radio. "Remember, we don't have to win this battle. We just have to make them remember that we were here." The human ships scattered throughout the enemy formation like wolves among sheep, their small size and desperate courage allowing them to achieve surprise again and again. But this time was different. This time, the Council fleet was prepared for human tactics. War Marshal Hector had studied every human battle, learning from each defeat his forces had suffered. His ships moved in tight formations that protected each other's weak points. When human vessels tried their ramming attacks, point defense systems were ready and waiting. When they tried to hide in debris fields, improved sensors found them quickly. "Give me a status report," Admiral Lee requested as explosions lit up the space around Earth like deadly fireworks. "We've lost 30 ships already," reported his tactical officer. "Planetary defenses are down to 40% capacity. The enemy is breaking through our outer defensive shell." Through the command center's thick windows, Lee could see the battle raging overhead. Bright flashes marked the deaths of ships and crews, human and alien alike. The space around Earth was becoming a graveyard filled with the wreckage of both fleets. But then something completely unexpected happened. New ships began appearing at the edge of the solar system, moving toward the battle at maximum speed. These weren't human ships, but vessels from species that had submitted to council rule decades or centuries before. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported the communications officer, his voice filled with excitement. "It's from the Kethri Liberation Fleet." The main screen came alive, showing the face of a being that looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard. "Admiral Lee of Earth, this is War Commander Sektal of the Free Kethri. We have watched your species fight for months against impossible odds. You have shown us that the Council can be defeated. Today we join you in battle." Similar messages came from across the galaxy. The mundane had risen from their reservation worlds. The Altarians had rebuilt their fleet in secret. The Velkari had sabotaged Council supply lines. Across 100 star systems, species that had accepted Council rule for generations were throwing off their chains and fighting for freedom. "The rebellion has begun," whispered Major Yoon in amazement. But even with allies arriving from across the galaxy, the battle for Earth remained desperate. Council forces pushed closer to the planet itself, their massive guns preparing to reduce humanity's homeworld to radioactive ash. This was the moment Admiral Lee had been preparing for since the war began. "Dr. Kim, activate Project Homeland," he ordered. On the surface of Earth, every city, every military base, every hidden installation activated at the same time. The planet's entire surface became a weapon, firing everything from nuclear missiles to experimental energy beams. But more importantly, it became a symbol of defiance that could be seen across the galaxy. Admiral Lee opened a final transmission to the entire galaxy. "This is Earth calling all free peoples of the galaxy. We are one small planet fighting for the right to exist as free beings. We may die today, but we die with dignity. We call upon every species that values liberty to join us. The line holds here, or it falls everywhere." The message was picked up and retransmitted by 1,000 rebel ships across the galaxy. On worlds that had been enslaved for generations, people heard humanity's call and found the courage to answer. The greatest uprising in galactic history began with Earth's final stand. Captain Choi's ship, the Incheon Rising, was down to emergency power and had lost most of its weapons. But she kept fighting, ramming damaged Council vessels and using her ship as a guided missile when conventional attacks failed. "Captain, we're losing life support," reported her chief engineer. "Hull breaches on all decks. We've got maybe 10 minutes before the ship breaks apart completely. Then we make those 10 minutes count for something," Choi replied with grim determination. She aimed her dying ship at War Marshal Hector's flagship. It was a move the Council had seen hundreds of times during the war, but they still couldn't find a way to stop it. The Incheon Rising struck the enemy command ship right in the middle, and both vessels disappeared in nuclear fire that could be seen from Mars. By the time the battle ended, Earth's defenses were shattered and most of the human fleet was destroyed. But the Council fleet was broken as well. Of the 38,000 ships that had entered the solar system with such confidence, fewer than 10,000 remained able to fight. And across the galaxy, the rebellion continued to spread like wildfire. Species that had lived under Council rule for centuries were fighting for their freedom. The empire that had seemed unbeatable was crumbling as its subject peoples remembered what it meant to be free. In the ruins of Seoul's command center, Admiral Lee survived long enough to receive reports from across human space. Earth was saved, not by superior weapons or brilliant tactics, but by the simple refusal to surrender. When surrender meant the death of everything that made them human, humanity had held the line and in holding it, had inspired others to draw lines of their own. "Sir," reported the communications officer, her voice filled with wonder, "we're receiving surrender requests from Council forces across 17 star systems. Their empire is collapsing." Lee smiled as medics worked to save his life. "Send a message to all human forces everywhere." The line held. The war is over. Years later, when children asked veterans of the Council War what had made victory possible, the answer was always the same. It wasn't superior technology or greater numbers. It was the understanding that some things were worth any sacrifice to preserve. The mining station called Titan's Rest hung in the darkness above a dead moon. Its metal framework stretched across several kilometers of space, looking like a giant skeleton made of steel. Commander Selkie Bayek watched the approaching Council fleet through her command center's main window, counting enemy ships with growing fear. 2,000 alien vessels against her small defense force of 12 ships and the station itself. Ma'am, we're getting the usual surrender message, reported Lieutenant Wu Jin Nam from the communications desk. Ignore it, Beck replied without taking her eyes off the enemy fleet. All ships move to defensive formation Delta. Use the station's bulk to protect our sides. Her small fleet moved into position around the mining station. They had turned every available ship into a weapon, including cargo haulers and ore processors. The miners themselves had volunteered to operate weapon systems they barely understood, refusing orders to evacuate to safer places. Captain Young Ho Shin commanded the modified ore freighter New Titan. He opened a channel to the command center. Commander, my ship wasn't built for this kind of fighting. We'll be scrap metal in the first exchange of fire. Then we make sure that exchange counts for something, Captain. Beck replied firmly. Remember, every hour we hold them here is another hour Earth has to get ready for what's coming. All across human space, similar scenes were playing out at every human outpost. On the lunar mining bases around Earth's moon, Sergeant Jin Woo Han led 300 Marines in preparing defenses against an assault force of 50,000 alien soldiers. Their weapons were old, their armor was thin, and their bunkers couldn't withstand direct hits from big ship weapons. But they had something the Council had never seen before: complete determination to make the enemy pay a terrible price. Sergeant, our sensors show enemy dropships getting ready to launch, reported Corporal Hai-Jin Park from the communications bunker. Let them come, Han replied, checking his rifle one more time. Every Marine knows what to do. We don't give them anything for free. Make them earn every meter of ground they take. In the outer solar system around the gas giant Europa, Captain Yoon-ji Lee commanded a submarine warfare campaign that confused and frustrated the Council forces. Her small fleet of stealth ships had been designed for hunting pirates in asteroid fields, but they worked perfectly for hit-and-run attacks against the much larger enemy fleet. Target locked on, reported her tactical officer from the submarine Soul Shark. Council cruiser, bearing 27 Mark IV. Fire all torpedo tubes, Lee ordered. Streams of torpedoes shot through space toward the unsuspecting Council ship. The enemy vessel's shields absorbed most of the damage, but Lee's submarines weren't trying to destroy ships in single attacks. They were trying to wound them, slow them down, force them to send escort ships for protection. High above Mars, fighter pilot Lieutenant Young Soo Park dove his interceptor through a formation of Council bombers, his weapons firing continuously. He had already destroyed 47 enemy fighters in the past month, making him Earth's best pilot. But individual skill couldn't change the basic mathematics of the war. Phoenix Leader, this is Control, came the voice from the orbital defense station. We've got 300 enemy fighters heading your way. Copy, Control. Phoenix Squadron moving to intercept. Park's 12 fighters went up against 300 Council attack craft. The outcome was certain, but Park and his pilots made the enemy pay heavily for their victory. By the time Phoenix Squadron was destroyed, they had shot down over 100 enemy fighters and delayed the bombing run by several crucial hours. Back at Titan's Rest, Commander Back's small fleet had been fighting for 3 days straight. The mining station itself had become a fortress, with its ore processing equipment converted into massive railguns that could punch through Council ship armor. But slowly, inevitably, the defenses were falling apart. Commander, we've lost the New Titan and the Busan miner, reported Lieutenant Nam, his voice rough from exhaustion. That leaves us with 4 ships still able to fight. What about the station? Weapons are down to 60% power. We've got hull breaches on sections 7 through 12. The crew is doing what they can, but we're running out of spare parts to fix things. Through the command center's windows, Beck could see the wreckage of her fleet floating in space. Good ships and good people all sacrificed to buy time for Earth. But the enemy kept coming, wave after wave of fresh ships replacing those that had been damaged or destroyed. Her communications officer's voice interrupted her thoughts. Ma'am, priority message coming in from Earth Command. Put it through. Admiral Lee's tired face appeared on her screen, showing the strain of coordinating humanity's desperate defense across dozens of star systems. Commander Baek, you've done incredible work at Titan's Rest. Your orders are to evacuate immediately. We need your experience for the defense of Earth itself. Sir, we can hold for at least another day, maybe 2. That's a direct order. Commander. Beck looked around her command center at the faces of her crew, miners and technicians who had become soldiers, fighting with courage that would have impressed professional warriors anywhere in the galaxy. "Sir, I request permission to remain with my command." "Sulky," Admiral Lee said, using her first name. "You've already given humanity more than we had any right to ask for. Don't throw your life away for pride." "It's not about pride, sir. It's about holding the line." Admiral Lee was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly, understanding what she meant. "I understand. Fight well, Commander. Earth will remember what you did here." The transmission ended. Beck opened a channel to what remained of her fleet. "All ships, this is Commander Bayek. We've been ordered to evacuate, but I'm staying to continue the fight. Any ship that wants to withdraw has my permission to do so." No ship moved. No captain responded to break formation. They would all die together, defending a mining station that had no real military value except as a place to make the enemy bleed. The final battle for Titan's Rest lasted 8 hours. The human defenders fought with everything they had, using mining explosives as weapons and cargo containers as improvised armor. When the station's main guns were destroyed, they used handheld weapons. When the hull was breached and air began leaking out, they fought in spacesuits. Commander Bayek's final act was to ram her command ship into the largest council vessel in the attack force. Her last words, transmitted on all radio frequencies, became famous throughout human space. "You want this rock? Come and take it." Similar scenes played out across the solar system as council forces pushed deeper into human territory. At every world, every station, every asteroid base, they found the same insane resistance. Humans who refused to retreat, who fought beyond all reason, who made the enemy pay terrible costs for every victory. Sergeant Han's Marines held their lunar base for 6 days against impossible odds. When their ammunition ran out, they fought with mining tools and homemade bombs. When the base was finally overrun, Han blew up the reactor, taking half the assault force with him in the explosion. Captain Lee's submarine fleet continued their hit-and-run campaign until the last ship was hunted down and destroyed. She and her crew died fighting in the rings around Saturn, still trying to protect supply convoys that no longer existed. Lieutenant Park's replacement fighter squadrons bought precious hours with their lives. Wave after wave of pilots, most of them barely trained civilians, threw themselves at overwhelming enemy formations. They died in their hundreds, but they died fighting. In the Council fleet, confusion and worry began to spread among the alien crews. This wasn't how conquests were supposed to work. Primitive species were supposed to surrender when faced with superior force. They weren't supposed to fight harder when the odds got worse. War Marshal Grixtan had been replaced by War Marshal Hector after the disaster at New Busan. Hector reviewed the casualty reports with growing alarm. 12,000 Council ships destroyed or badly damaged, hundreds of thousands of crew members dead or wounded, all to conquer empty space and worthless rocks that humans defended like they were sacred. "Ground, give me a status report," he demanded, from his new flagship. "We control 70% of human space," reported his tactical officer, "but our advance has slowed down significantly. Human resistance isn't unexpected. They're primitives with old weapons and outdated technology." "Yes, sir. But they fight like they're protecting something holy." Hector studied the tactical display showing human space. Red symbols marked Council victories, but each red symbol had cost them far more than it should have. At this rate, they would conquer humanity's empire only to find their own fleet too damaged to control what they had won. "What's our estimated time to reach Earth?" "At our current rate of advance, approximately 2 months, sir." 2 months. When the campaign began, Council military planners had predicted total victory in 3 days. Now they were looking at months of grinding warfare against an enemy that seemed to get more determined as the situation became more hopeless. But surely, Hector thought to himself, surely when they reached Earth itself, humanity would finally see reason. No species would sacrifice their homeworld for the sake of pride. No creatures could be that insane. He was about to learn just how wrong he could be. Captain Taehyun Shin stood on the bridge of his battleship, looking at the screen that showed enemy ships approaching. 5,000 alien vessels moved through space in perfect formation, their metal hulls shining with deadly purpose. Behind him, 49 other human ships waited in defensive positions around the colony world of New Busan. The Soul's Pride was Captain Shin's ship, and he had commanded her for 8 years. She wasn't the biggest or fastest ship in the human fleet, but her crew knew how to fight. On the bridge with him stood his most trusted officers. Navigator Inho Park was young, barely 25, fresh from the Space Academy. Chief Engineer Bo-Ra Lim had served on the ship for 15 years and knew every wire and bolt. Colonel Yun-Seo Kim commanded the Marines. Her hand always ready on her weapon, sir. We're getting a message from the enemy fleet, reported Communications Officer Eugene Lee. Put it on the main screen. War Marshal Grixtan appeared on the screen. His armor was scarred from 100 battles across the galaxy. He was a creature built for war with multiple arms and glowing red eyes that had seen the destruction of many worlds. Human Commander, Grixtan said in his rough voice, I am required by law to offer you one final chance to surrender. Put down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your crews will be treated fairly according to the rules of war. Captain Shin looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These people had served with him for years. They had families back on Earth, dreams for the future, lives they wanted to live. All of them were looking to him for an answer that would decide whether they lived or died. War Marshal, Shin replied in a calm voice. We appreciate your offer. But we're going to have to say no. This is human space and we plan to keep it that way. Grixtan's red eyes flared with what might have been anger or respect. Then you will die here today? Probably, Shin agreed. But you'll remember us. The message ended. For a moment, the bridge was completely silent except for the quiet humming of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of instruments. Then Chief Lim spoke up from her position at the engineering controls. All systems are working perfectly, Captain. We're ready for whatever they throw at us. Weapons are loaded and ready to fire, reported Tactical Officer Min Ho Kwan. Marines are ready for boarding action, Colonel Kim added. Captain Shin nodded and opened a channel to speak to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Soul's Pride. Remember what we're fighting for today. Every second we buy here gives Earth more time to get ready for the real battle. Every shot we take costs them ships they'll need later. Make them pay for every meter of space. The Council fleet began their attack the way they always did, with overwhelming force designed to crush enemy resistance immediately. Massive energy beams shot out from their lead ships, weapons powerful enough to destroy most vessels with a single hit. The human fleet scattered according to their battle plan, breaking into smaller groups that moved between asteroids and space debris. But something went wrong with what the Council expected to happen. The first attack destroyed 3 human ships, but the remaining vessels didn't panic or run away. Instead, they regrouped and began fighting back in a way that caught the enemy completely by surprise. Navigator Park had been studying enemy formations during their approach. Captain, their lead ships are using old battle tactics. If we can get behind their command vessel, their entire formation will have to reorganize. Do it, Shin ordered without hesitation. The Soul's Pride and 5 escort vessels broke away from the main battle and swept around the enemy fleet's side. It was a desperate move that should have gotten them all killed. But the enemy formation was designed to fight opponents who retreated when outnumbered. They weren't prepared for humans who attacked when facing odds of 100 to 1. The surprise attack worked perfectly. 3 Council command ships were destroyed before they could react, throwing their entire fleet into confusion. But the cost was terrible. 4 of the 6 human ships in the attack were destroyed, including the escort carrier Incheon Defender with all hands aboard. We hurt them, Park reported, his voice tight with emotion as he watched friendly ships disappear from his screen. Their formation is breaking apart. The battle continued for 6 long hours. The human fleet used every trick they had learned in decades of fighting pirates and rebels in the outer colonies. They hid behind asteroids, used fake signals to confuse enemy targeting systems, and coordinated their attacks with a precision that amazed even their enemies. Chief Engineer Lim kept the Soul's Pride fighting long after it should have been destroyed. When the main engines were damaged, she redirected power from life support systems. When the primary weapons stopped working, she brought the backup systems online in 30 seconds instead of the usual 5 minutes. When hull breaches threatened to suck out all their air, she sealed them with spare parts and pure determination. But slowly, inevitably, the human fleet was being destroyed. Ship after ship fell to overwhelming enemy fire. The destroyer Busan Fire died while defending a damaged cruiser. The frigate New Hope exploded while ramming a Council battleship. One by one, the lights representing friendly ships went out on Captain Shin's tactical display. Sir, Park reported, his voice barely steady, we're down to 8 ships still fighting. Around them, the Soul's Pride was dying too. Secondary explosions shook the hull as damaged systems failed one by one. The bridge lights flickered as power went up and down. Through the windows they could see the wreckage of the human fleet drifting in the cold darkness of space. "Sir, I'm receiving a priority message from Admiral Lee," Communications Officer Eugen Lee reported. "He's ordering all surviving ships to retreat immediately." "Negative," Shin replied firmly. "We haven't finished our job yet." Colonel Kim looked up from her damage reports. "Captain, we've already bought them 6 days. That's more time than anyone expected us to get." "It's not enough," Shin said. He opened a channel to the remaining human ships. "All vessels, this is Soul's Pride. Continue the fight. Make every shot count." The final phase of the battle was pure desperation. The 8 surviving human ships formed a tight formation and charged directly at the Council Fleet's center. It was suicide, but it was suicide with a purpose. Every second they kept fighting was another second for Earth's defenses to get ready. The Soul's Pride led the charge, her hull blazing with enemy fire from all directions. Chief Lim kept the engines running even as explosions tore through the ship. Colonel Kim's Marines fought alien boarding parties in the corridors. Navigator Park kept feeding targeting information to the weapons crews until the very end. When the main reactor began to overload, Captain Shin made his final decision. "All hands abandon ship. I repeat, all hands abandon ship immediately." "Sir, we're not leaving you here," Colonel Kim said firmly. "That's a direct order." "Colonel, with all due respect, sir, we're not going to follow it." Chief Lim's voice came over the ship's communication system from the engine room. "Captain, I can hold the reactor together for maybe 10 more minutes. If we're going to ram something, now is the time to do it." Shin looked at his tactical display one last time. The Council Fleet's flagship, War Marshal Grixtown's personal command ship, was less than 2 kilometers away. He could see it through the bridge windows, its massive hull covered with weapons. "Navigator, set course for the enemy flagship. All engines, maximum speed." "Course set, sir." The Soul's Pride accelerated directly toward the Council flagship, taking tremendous damage as every enemy weapon in range focused fire on stopping her. But Chief Lim had built those engines to last, and Navigator Park had plotted the perfect course. At the last moment, Captain Shin opened a final channel to the enemy flagship. "War Marshal Grixtown, this is Captain Shin of the Soul's Pride. I told you that you'd remember us." The human battleship struck the Council flagship at full ramming speed. Both vessels disappeared in a brilliant explosion that could be seen from the other side of the solar system. When the battle was finally over, the Council had lost 300 ships, including their fleet flagship and War Marshal Grixton himself. The entire human force was destroyed, but they had achieved something impossible. A primitive species with inferior technology had killed 6 enemy ships for every one they lost. In the debris field, automated message beacons transmitted the battle's final report back to Earth. The line held at New Busan. Soul's Pride and all hands died fighting. Enemy losses were heavy. Prepare for the next wave. Council Prime Velthar reviewed the battle reports with growing concern. This wasn't supposed to happen. Primitive species were supposed to break when faced with superior force, not fight harder when the odds got worse. 300 ships lost to destroy 50 human vessels. At this rate, the complete destruction of humanity would cost them their entire fleet. But surely this had been humanity's main fighting force. Surely they had nothing left to fight with now. The huge space station floated in the empty darkness between the stars. It was called Nexus Prime, and it was bigger than most planets. Metal towers stretched up for miles, covered in lights that blinked like stars. Deep inside the station, in a room so large it could hold a small city, 12 different alien races had come together for a very important meeting. Commander Hyunwoo Kim stood alone in the middle of the giant room. He was the only human among creatures that could destroy his entire world, without even trying hard. His dark blue uniform had the badge of Earth's Space Navy on it. His hands looked steady, but his heart was beating very fast. Next to him stood Ambassador So-Young Park. She was very smart and had spent many years learning about alien languages and customs. At the front of the huge table sat something called Council Prime Velthar. It looked like it was made of living glass or crystal. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire room, even though it didn't seem to have a mouth. "Human representative," it said, "you have been called here to hear our decision about your species." Hyunwoo stood up straight and looked directly at the crystal being. "I am here to listen, Council Prime." All around the room, the 12 different alien species began making strange sounds. Some clicked like insects, others made buzzing noises, and some whistled like birds. Velthar raised what might have been an arm, and everyone became quiet immediately. "Your people have become a problem," Velthar said in a voice that sounded like wind blowing through caves. "You discovered how to travel faster than light only a short time ago. But already you have built colonies on 17 different worlds. You take land that belongs to other species. You expand everywhere without asking permission. You steal what is not yours to take." A huge creature covered in what looked like metal armor stood up at the table. It had many arms and glowing red eyes. This was War Marshal Grixtan, the military leader of one of the most powerful alien armies. "Humans fight everyone they meet," he said in broken words. "They shoot first, ask questions later. They are dangerous to the peace we have worked to build." Hyunwoo felt anger rising in his chest, but Ambassador Park gently touched his arm to calm him down. She stepped forward and spoke in perfect alien language. "Honorable Council members, humans have only fought back when others attacked us first. We have never started a war with any of your species." Something that looked like a giant jellyfish with tentacles began changing colors as it spoke. "You call it fighting back? What about when your ships attacked our mining boats?" "Those mining boats were in the Kepler star system," Park replied calmly. "Humans had already built colonies there and claimed it according to space law. Space law does not apply to primitive species like yours," hissed another council member that looked like a giant snake with wings. The argument went on for hours. Each alien species told stories about problems with humans. They said humans were too quick to fight, too stubborn, too unwilling to follow orders. They painted a picture of a wild, dangerous race that threatened the safety of the entire galaxy. Finally, Council Prime Velthar called for silence. The room became as quiet as a tomb. "We have made our decision," it announced. "Humanity will give up all colonies beyond your home solar system. You will accept our protection and guidance. Your military will be destroyed. Your technology will be watched and controlled. You will become a protected species, just like the Kethri and the Mundane." Hyunwoo knew about those two races. They had once been powerful civilizations with their own armies and space fleets. Now they lived like pets in special areas, their freedom traded away for safety. Their worlds had become like zoos where council members could visit and look at them. "And if we say no?" Hyunwoo asked, though he already knew what the answer would be. "Then humanity will be completely destroyed," Velthar said without any emotion in its voice. "We have done this many times before. The choice is yours to make." Ambassador Park moved closer to Hyunwoo. "We need time to talk about this with our government on Earth." "You have 72 hours, Velthar said. "Come back here with your answer. Choose wisely. We will not make this offer again." As the big meeting ended, all the different alien species began leaving the giant room. Some looked at the two humans with what might have been pity in their strange eyes. Others showed clear hatred or disgust. A few seemed curious, as if they were wondering what these odd creatures would decide to do. War Marshal Grixtan walked over to them as they got ready to leave. "I have fought many different species in my long life," he said in his rough, harsh voice. "Most choose to live when faced with death. Some choose to die fighting. Both choices I can understand, but your species is different from all others. You fight when you should run away. You stand up when you should bow down. I do not understand humans at all." "Maybe that's exactly why you're afraid of us," Hyunwoo replied. Grixtan's red eyes grew brighter for a moment. Then something that might have been respect crossed his alien face. "Perhaps you are right. But fear is not always wrong. Sometimes the thing you fear most is the thing that will destroy you in the end." After the War Marshal walked away, Park turned on a small device she had hidden in her sleeve. It had been recording everything that happened in the meeting. "Did you get it all?" Hyunwoo asked quietly. "Every single word," she said. "Command will have the full recording in 6 hours." They walked back to their small ship that was docked at the station's port. As they got ready for the long journey back to Earth, Hyunwoo looked out at the stars through the ship's windows. Somewhere out there in the darkness was home. Earth held 4 billion people who had no idea that their entire species had just been given a death sentence. "What do you think our leaders will decide?" Park asked as she began calculating the jump back to Earth. "I think they'll tell us to fight," Hyunwoo said quietly. "And I think we'll all die trying." "That's better than living like animals in a cage," Park replied. As their ship jumped into hyperspace, heading for Earth, neither of them saw the small probe that followed them through space. Council Prime Velthar wanted to make sure humanity's response was recorded for the official records. In all of the Council's long experience, primitive species always chose to submit when faced with overwhelming force. But Velthar had lived for over 2,000 years, and in all that time, it had never met a species quite like humanity. Most creatures had basic survival instincts that were stronger than their pride. Most chose to live rather than die for honor when the choice was clear and simple. The Council had fought hundreds of wars and absorbed dozens of different civilizations into their empire. They had perfected the art of conquest through fear and intimidation. They knew exactly how much force to show, exactly what threats to make, exactly how to break a species' will to resist. What they didn't know was that some species simply could not be broken. Some creatures would rather die free than live in chains, and humanity was about to teach them that lesson in the most violent way imaginable. Deep underground beneath the city of Sol, in a bunker that could survive a nuclear bomb, Earth's most important leaders sat around a metal table. The room was built to protect against any attack, but it couldn't protect against the fear that filled everyone's hearts. On the big screen at the front of the room, the recording from the alien space station played for the 4th time. Still nobody spoke. Admiral Jae Sung Lee sat at the head of the table. He was an older man with gray hair and deep lines on his face from many years of commanding Earth's space fleet. He had fought pirates and rebels in the far colonies for 15 years. He had never lost a single battle, but he had never faced anything like this before. Next to him sat General Mi-kyung Choi. She was a small woman, but her eyes were as hard as steel. She commanded all of Earth's ground forces, the soldiers, tanks, and weapons that protected the planet itself. She had earned her high rank by fighting in the Mars Rebellion and the War on Europa. She knew how to win when the odds were against her. President Dong Hyun-yoon could not sit still. He walked back and forth behind his chair, his mind racing through different plans and ideas. Before he became president, he had been a military planner. He was good at finding ways to win battles that seemed impossible. But this time, every plan he thought of ended with humanity being destroyed. 200 ships, he said finally, his voice quiet and tired. We have exactly 200 ships against their 50,000. Our best weapons can barely scratch their armor. Our shields can't stop their big guns. We are outgunned, outnumbered, and completely outmatched. Numbers don't tell the whole story, General Choi said in a calm voice. We've been watching how they fight from the small battles on our borders. They depend on having more ships and scaring their enemies into giving up. They've never fought an enemy that refused to break. Dr. Haewon Kang looked up from her tablet computer. She was the head of Earth's weapon research programs. I've been studying the scans that Commander Kim's ship took at their space station. Their technology is better than ours, but not by as much as they want us to think. Their energy weapons are more powerful, but they take longer to charge up again. Their ships have thick armor, but they can't turn or move as quickly as ours. Are you saying we can actually win this war? President Yoon asked, stopping his pacing to look at her. I'm saying we might be able to make them pay a much higher price than they expect, Dr. Kang answered. Admiral Lee finally spoke up. His voice was deep and serious. The real question isn't whether we can win. The question is whether we're willing to die trying. He looked around the table at each person's face. If we give up and let them rule us, humanity becomes nothing more than animals in a zoo. Our children will grow up in cages no matter how comfortable those cages might be. And if we fight back, our children might not live to grow up at all, said Defense Minister Chang Min-seo from across the table. The argument continued for many hours. Some people wanted to try talking with the aliens again, asking for better terms. Others thought they should surrender immediately to save as many lives as possible. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. Earth's colonies held 6 billion people. Even if humanity fought with everything they had, billions would die in the war. But then General Choi stood up and walked to the large map on the wall that showed all of human space. My grandfather fought in the Korean War many years ago, she said quietly. He used to tell me stories about a place called Chosen Reservoir, where a few thousand soldiers held off an entire enemy army for days. He said the secret wasn't that they were stronger or smarter than their enemies. It was that they decided some things were worth dying for. She turned around to face everyone in the room. Every person sitting at this table became a soldier or a leader because they believed in something bigger than themselves. We believed that human beings should be free to choose their own path among the stars. Are we going to give up that belief just because the path got more dangerous? President Yoon stopped walking and looked at her. You're talking about the complete destruction of our species, Mi-kyung. Not just military deaths. They'll destroy every human world, every space station, every ship in space. Earth itself might not survive their attack. Then we make them work for it, Admiral Lee said firmly. We make every star system they take cost them more ships than they want to lose. We make them remember that humanity didn't go quietly into the darkness. Dr. Kang looked up from her computer calculations. There's something else we should think about. Our spies tell us that several alien species in the Council aren't happy with how things are run. They stay quiet because they think fighting back is hopeless. But if humanity shows that the Council can be hurt, that they can lose ships in battles, it might inspire other species to rebel too. That's a huge gamble, said Minister Seo. We'd be betting 6 billion human lives on the hope that aliens we've never even met might join a war we can't win. Every important choice in human history has been about betting everything on something uncertain, President Yoon said slowly. That's how we got to the stars in the first place. That's how we built our civilization. The room became completely silent. Each person wrestled with the enormous weight of the decision they had to make. This wasn't about military tactics or political games. This was about the very soul of their species. Finally, President Yoon came back to his seat. We'll vote on it. All in favor of surrender and accepting the Council's protection? Nobody raised their hand. Not a single person. All in favor of fighting back against the Council's ultimatum. Every hand in the room went up without hesitation. Then may God help us all, President Yoon whispered. 6 hours later, Commander Kim stood once again in the giant chamber on the alien space station. The same 12 species watched him with expressions ranging from curiosity to hatred. Council Prime Velthar seemed confident as it asked the formal question. Human representative, what is your species' answer to our generous offer of protection? Kim had memorized the exact words that Earth's leaders had written for him. His voice carried clearly through the enormous chamber. Humanity thanks the Council for their concern about our welfare. However, we must politely decline your offer. We will defend our territory and our right to exist as free beings. The chamber exploded with surprise sounds from 12 different alien species. Several council members began talking at once in their native languages. Velthar raised an arm-like appendage for silence, but it took much longer than usual to quiet the room. You refuse our protection? Velthar's crystal voice carried a note of complete disbelief. We do. You choose death over life. We choose freedom over slavery. War Marshal Grixton leaned forward in his chair, his red eyes glowing brighter than before. You understand what you are choosing? We will not make this offer again. We will not show any mercy. We will eliminate your entire species. Kim looked directly into the War Marshal's glowing eyes. We've made our choice. Have you made yours? The challenge in his voice was impossible to miss. Ambassador Park, standing behind him, felt both fear and pride at the same time. Her species was about to face total destruction, but they would die as free beings. Council Prime Velthar's voice took on a formal, official tone. By the authority of the Galactic Council, humanity is declared a threat to galactic peace. Military action is authorized to eliminate this threat completely. War Marshal Grixton, you will command this operation. It will be my great honor, Grixton replied. As Kim and Park prepared to leave the chamber, Velthar spoke one more time. Your defiance changes nothing. We have destroyed species far more advanced than yours. Your resistance will last 3 days at most. Kim stopped at the chamber door and turned back. War Marshal, how long did it take you to conquer the Altarian Empire? 2 years, Grixton replied, confused by the strange question. They had 1 million ships and controlled 100 star systems, Kim said calmly. We have 200 ships and 17 colonies. But I promise you this, when this war is over, you'll remember our names.